Ciao ragazzi, welcome to Talk Calcio TV on YouTube. So, ciao, welcome to this episode. Of course, tomorrow we have the big game, that is Fiorentina hosting Juventus at the Artemio Franchi in Florence. La Viola clash with the reigning champions, the Bianconeri. Now, this isn't a game of the clash of the titans in Italian football. It's not a Juventus versus Milan. It's not a Lazio versus Roma. It's not even a Milan derby. However, for La Viola fans of Fiorentina, it is their game of the season. It is the one that they must win. So far, their season has not been great. If they didn't win tomorrow night, it would be the straw that would break the camel's back, possibly, for coach Silvio Paiola. So you have to ask yourself, why do Fiorentina have so much hatred towards Juventus, the reigning champions? Now, if you know your Italian geography, you'll know that Fiorentina, from Florence in the Tuscany region, is in the north of Italy like Juventus from the Piemonte region. Now they're not far, but it's not close. Of course, now the blue touch paper of hatred between the two was lit in 1982. Of course, now that season Juventus won the Scudetto on the last day in controversial circumstances. So say thanks to refereeing decisions, not for the first time with Juventus, at the expense of Fiorentina. Now when the two sides met the following season, a banner at the Artemio Franchi greeted Juventus saying, "Better to be second than be thieves," of course referring to Juventus, so say, stealing the title thanks to help from the officials. Roberto Baggio was signed by Juventus from Fiorentina for a world record at the time of £8 million, and of course he was given the famous Bianconeri number 10 worn by French superstar Michel Platini previously. His transfer didn't go down too well in Florence. Of course there were riots on the streets, there were 50 arrests, there were several people injured. They were unhappy that their superstar would now wear the black and white stripes famous by Juventus. Now in that season, just after Baggio had transferred, he returned to the Artemio Franchi with Juventus. In that game, Juventus were awarded a penalty, which Roberto Baggio famously refused to take. Now he claims it's because the goalie of Fiorentina knew him too well and he thinks he would have missed it. Later in that game though, this is the image that really of course is famous the world over. Roberto Baggio was substituted. Now, as he made his way to the dugout where the Juventus players were, a purple scarf was thrown from the crowd towards Baggio. Now, Baggio could have just walked past it. However, he picked up the scarf, the Viola scarf, and he put it round his neck before he sat down on the Juventus bench. Now, La Viola fans, of course, they applauded him. They saw it as a sign of that he still had respect for them. However, Juventus fans, they didn't like this at all. They found it impossible to ever accept Roberto Baggio after that. He said famously after that game, "My blood is purple, the colour of Fiorentina always in my heart." It's fair to say his time at Juventus was always, you saw moments of brilliance, but that was always used against him later on in his Juventus career. Now when we're talking about Roberto Baggio, of course, he was then famously superseded by Alessandro Del Piero at Juventus. And that leads me on to possibly one of the best Juventus and Fiorentina games of all time, the 1994-1995 season, of course, when Juventus won the Scudetto. Now, I remember watching it on the telly on Channel 4 at the time. Those were the days, of course, when Serie A was the best league in the world. Of course, Fiorentina were into a early two-goal lead at the Stadio della Alpi in Turin. Of course, Juventus brought it back to 2-2, but of course, is that famous winning goal scored by Alessandro Del Piero. The ball was hit long into the box, and before even bouncing, he turned, and that volley, which eluded Francesco Toro into the net. Of course, a celebration where he basically, as he went on the pitch, he was on his tummy and the players bundled him. I remember watching that game. That was some spectacular game, ended with a spectacular winning goal by Del Piero. Of course, that season Juventus marched on to the Scudetto. Fiorentina, of course, did get themselves into the UEFA Cup, but it was yet again Juventus. They won their 23rd Scudetto. Now, this season, of course, it's Juventus, of course, are in second. They're pushing Napoli all the way for the Scudetto. Fiorentina, on the other hand, their season, as I mentioned at the start, has been underwhelming. If you go into this game, if you look at the last 5 games, of course, Juventus have won all 5. Fiorentina have drawn 2, lost 2, although they did get a win last week away at Bologna against the odds. Their talisman, or their main man, Federico Chiesa, of course the son of Enrico Chiesa, said this week, "This is like a derby for me." He said he must score against Juventus if they are to have any chance of beating them. Of course, as we know, last year Juventus did come unstuck at the Artemio Franchi, losing 2-1. There was 6 minutes injury time added on, but they still can get an equaliser, of course, Juventus at the time. Of course, Quadrado represented Fiorentina in a loan spell. Of course, he is now with the Bianconeri. It's fair to say Silvio Paiola, he's already under pressure. If he loses this game, it's fair to say the fans will call for him to go. You know, if he's got any chance to hang on to his position, he must beat Juventus tomorrow night on Friday. Now, what do I think is going to happen in this game? Well, I think Juventus, you know, given the form they're in, you have to fancy the reigning champions. Of course, they do have Tottenham Hotspur in the Champions League on Tuesday. We will do a special episode on that next week, so stay tuned for that one. So it's fair to say Allegri cannot really rest any of his key men, even they aren't fully fit. It was confirmed today Paulo Dybala is unlikely to feature. He will be included for the squad for the game against Fiorentina and against Tottenham for Juventus. Gonzalo Higuain, though, at the moment, he is the man in hot form. Of course, a hat-trick last week against Sassuolo, 35 goals this season. I expect a bit more resilience, though, from La Viola tomorrow night than Sassuolo, the Nera Verdi put up last week, especially as they are at home. Of course, last year's win against Juventus, it didn't stop Juventus going all the way to the Scudetto. However, this year, if they were to win this really could derail Juventus's chances of retaining the Scudetto. And if you're for Napoli, it would really put them in the driving seat ahead of their clash encounter come April. So, what do I think? Predictions on this one? I am going to go for a Juventus win. Of course, I say that not only because it's Juventus, you know, as I say in many episodes, they always find a way to win. Fiorentina, they did win last week. I've got to say, their underwhelming season, their bad defending. I can just see Higuain and co punishing La Viola if they're even given the slightest chance or the slightest mistake making. I am going to go for a Juventus win. That's my prediction on that one. It would be nice to see La Viola, you know, to put up some fight. Like I say, this could have all the big bearing out on the Scudetto race. I'm sure Fiorentina would take nothing more than satisfaction knowing that they helped dent Juventus' title, retaining the Scudetto bid. So, tell us what you think. Who's going to win the big clash tomorrow? Will Juventus carry on their push on Napoli? Can Fiorentina derail them? Tell us what you think. Like, comment below, and don't forget to subscribe. Talk Calcio TV on YouTube. So, thank you for watching, and we'll speak to you on the next episode. Arrivederci.